All right, let's go ahead and get it rocking. Let's go ahead and get it rocking. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Life of a Champ podcast. For today's episode 173, we're going to be discussing the games within the game. If you are new, make sure to go ahead and follow me on TikTok, Twitch, and Rumble as well. All at Life of a Champ podcast, as well as follow me on YouTube if you're not already watching on YouTube. Life of a Champ on there as well. To get us started, a few things I want to mention. This is the last podcast. No, this is the last podcast of the year, so I just want to say if you've made it to the end of the year with us, I appreciate you. I appreciate you very very much, and looking forward to next year for sure. Definitely we'll be giving out the game, and definitely we'll be switching things up as well. So look forward to that for sure. Other than that, I would like to give this a little precursor for the episode for today. So a few things I want to say. One thing is this episode is I wanted to make this episode even though it's a little unclear right now, right? Because I haven't discussed anything. I wanted to make this episode because I recognize that in society, especially with younger people, especially younger men, they're very misguided, right? And then they need a set of ideals. They need something to strive for. They need ideas and things that will help develop their mind. That is what I'm here to do. So that is what I will do for today's episode. And and hopefully, regardless of who you are, hopefully this can benefit you in some type of way. At the very least, it can help you organize your thoughts. More importantly, I think that's very very important for sure. So, other than that, is there anything else I want to say for today's episode? This is the first podcast that I'm 22, so like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's been a little minute since I've been back, and it just feels great to be back. So I appreciate you guys for stopping by. If you guys have any questions or comments, or if you like anything that I say on today's episode, make sure to leave in the comments. It'd be more than appreciated for sure. Also, if you're on Twitch, let me know as well. So let's get it started, man. Let's get it started. So the game with the games within the game, right? So I think the first thing though that we must understand is the kind of the context that I'm trying to use the game in, right? And the games essentially are things that you can do. That's the way that I would put it. So they're life decisions, their habits, their way of being, their identities that you can uphold essentially through action, right? Those are going to be the games that you can play. So for example, a game that I'm playing is going to the gym. That is a game that I play, right? That is a game that not enough people play, in my opinion. That is also a game that a lot of people play at the same time, but not enough people are playing it. I play that game, and by playing that game, which is going to be what I would call a daily game, right? By playing that game, I could eventually play the bigger, or by playing on the daily, I'm playing a bigger game, which is going to be, let's just say, building a better body, right? And by building a better body, which is the bigger game within that smaller game, the bigger game within building my body is is the goal to try to be as healthy as I possibly can be, right? And obviously the bigger game which makes that a smaller game, which is going to be longevity, health and longevity, right? The reason why we make decisions and the reasons why we live life, hopefully, are to extend your life as long as you possibly can live. That is going to be the bigger game, right? But what you must understand is in this game of life, as that was just an example, there's going to be many different games that you can choose to play, right? So first, you must figure out what games are actually worth playing. And this is something that I don't see enough people taking the time to ask themselves the questions of what are things that are truly worth doing, that are going to give you the outcomes that you want within your life, that are also aligned with your goals, right? I don't see enough people taking action intentionally like that, right? This entire podcast that I want to make today is going to be hopefully a podcast that you can take and use with actual intention. And at the very least, like I said, organize your thoughts within your own mind, or within, maybe bring it in within the real world. Maybe you do it in a note, or maybe you write it down or something like that. But nonetheless, I want you to first analyze, and this is going to take a lot of time in my opinion, right? It took a decent amount of time for me. But with that being said, I finally have figured out what games are actually worth playing. So, for example, I'll give you one example. A game that I see that is worth playing in my opinion is going to be chasing fulfillment, or not even necessarily chasing fulfillment, but striving to be a more fulfilled person by making life decisions that will suggest that my life is more fulfilled than the average person, right? Or it is fulfilled with things that the average person is lacking, right? That is what I would deem to be a game that I think is worth playing. Now, I'm going to give you something that maybe you know, maybe you don't know. Most people, they play the game of what is going to make me happy right now in the moment. What is going to give me the satisfaction and comfort right now in the moment. And that's the game that they choose to play. And here's the thing: there's going to be there's going to be some times where maybe that game is the game that's actually worth playing. More than likely, it's probably not going to be that game, right? People convince themselves that, hey, these games that are very very superficial, very very yeah, they're very superficial. They have no depth to them. They have no substance to them. And like I said, if you expend it all right now, you're chasing after short term satisfaction, right? That instant gratification. That is what you're chasing, essentially. At least through your actions, that is what you're chasing. And obviously, you see the result of the people that go ahead and do that. They don't live a life that you want to live. That's just what it comes down to, right? So for the people that are living a life that you want to go ahead and live, what are the certain games that they choose to play, right? They have figured out something that you haven't figured out. They have figured out what games they want to play. So therefore they play it, and not only do they play it, but they play it at the highest level. So you must ask yourself, what games are worth playing? What games do I see others playing that would get me closer, that if I started playing today, that would get me closer to the person that I want to be, right? So figure out, that's the first part. Figure out what games are worth playing, right? And then you must also figure out, this isn't exactly the same thing. What games what games do you want to or do you well yeah, what games do you want to play? Cuz here's the thing. There's a difference, right? There's a lot of games that a lot of people see that are worth playing, but yet they don't play them. That's just what it is. For example, right? The example that I used earlier with going to the gym, I'm just using that as a quick example. But most people, they think that is going to be a game that is worthwhile because it's going to give them the results that they would like. But yet, that isn't exactly the game that they choose to play, right? And a lot of people, that's something that you'll observe within human behavior if you're an observer long enough. You'll begin to see that people's actions contradict what they say, and that's why you pay attention even more to the people who are a man of their word or who say what they're going to do and then do it, right? That's more admirable, right? But nonetheless, figure out, like I said, first part is going to be figure out what games are worth playing, and then you must also figure out what games that you actually want to play. And the way that I would make that assessment is by seeing if they are aligned with the goals that you have for the future self, right? If they're aligned, then that game is going to be worth playing, and it may be a game that you even maybe even a game that you want to play, right? So figure out all those, and then one thing I want you, and then here's the thing: what I want you to do, right? I want you to think about the bigger games that people play, right? Maybe it's status, or maybe it's success, or your definition of success, which is something that I talked about a few podcasts ago, right? But what are the bigger games within this life? Maybe you want wealth, right? Maybe wealth is one of the games that you want to go ahead and play, right? So the question that you must ask yourself is, yes, a lot of people have these bigger games that they want to go ahead and partake in, and maybe they even claim that they go ahead and play it, right? But what they fail to do is to ask themselves the question of, what smaller games can I play that will contribute to the eventual bigger game that I want to play, right? You must figure that out. So, for example, right, a lot of people, they say they want money, they want to play that wealth game, whatever, right? They don't say it exactly like that, but essentially that's what they want to go ahead and partake in, right? But the question that you must ask yourself is, what is the game that you must play in order to acquire the skills that will allow you to attend the game that is worth attending, in your opinion, right? So you must break it down, essentially. You must figure out the smaller games that you must play. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's skill acquisition, right? Or maybe it's developing a certain characteristic of yourself, right? That would be, in essence, the smaller game that will eventually lead you to the bigger games, right? Um, and I would say, if, like I said, if you're trying to pursue, having a lot of money, some of these games that you're going to need to go ahead and develop are going to extend outside of what you would conventionally think is exactly directly contributing to your goal, right? Because because like I said, obviously you need skill acquisition, right? You just need that, right? And obviously with skill acquisition, you're going to need a lot more than just that, right? You're going to need things like self discipline. You're going to need to be able to um, have conversation that is constructive, right? That's going to be another thing that I would say would be in line with that. But nonetheless, those are going to be the smaller games, the indirect games that will eventually lead you to the result that you want, which is obviously playing the wealth game, like I had mentioned. But like I said, you must ask yourself, okay, so if I want to play this big game, right? What are the smaller games that I must play before I can attain that, right? Maybe, like I said, maybe that's going to look like you developing your self discipline in, let's just say, the gym, or let's just say your self discipline within, within another thing. Maybe it's you trying to control your urges, right? Your impulsive urges. Maybe that instilling that level of self discipline within yourself will eventually give you more of a chance, more of a chance for you to play the bigger game of the wealth game, right? Obviously, that's just an example, but you see, if you don't develop those types of skills that are going to be essential to the bigger game that you want to go ahead and play, then you'll never play the bigger game. You might say you want to play the bigger game, but yet you're not. But you're not playing the bigger game. You see what I'm saying, right? So, like I said, don't be contradictory within this, right? Don't be contradictory within this. So, as we all know, this is going to be the last episode for this year. So the question that I have for you is this: what games do you want to play next year? What are games that are worth playing next year? What are characteristics that you want to go ahead and develop? What are certain skills that you want to go ahead and pursue? What are the bigger games that you think are worth playing? Right? And more importantly, I want you to analyze this as well, because not only should you analyze exactly where you want to be, right? The games that you want to play, but I think it's more important for you to analyze what games have you been playing all along? What are the bigger games that you are unconsciously contributing to? Maybe you're doing a bad habit, or maybe you're not doing a positive habit. And by you not doing that, or by you doing that, right, you're essentially contributing to a game that you might not want to go ahead and play. You might do it unconsciously. And I would say most people, unfortunately, they do it unconsciously, right? Let's just say, for example, this is just a quick example. Let's just say smoking cigarettes or something like that, right? If you do it for a long enough period of time, obviously you recognize that it's not healthy, and maybe you want to be a healthy individual, right? Obviously that'd be contradictory in itself, but nonetheless, it's interesting because it's contradictory, and that's pretty much what I have to say for that, right? You might want to play the bigger game of maybe longevity, or maybe being the healthiest person that you possibly can be, right? Or being in the best condition that your body will allow you to be in, right? But yet, if your actions and the choices that you make aren't aligned with that bigger game, then how the hell do you ever expect to be pursuing that bigger game? That just wouldn't make any sense. But yet, you see so many people doing that, right? So, like I said, first question I want you to ask yourself is, what games do you want to play next year? That's a big question. That's a big question, because maybe it's going to look like I said, you developing a certain skill. Maybe it's going to look like you pursuing a certain passion or fulfilling a certain purpose, right? The next question would be, what games have you been playing all along? That's another question you must ask. And one thing I want to say with this as well, he appreciate for stopping by. GDP, appreciate for checking in, man. Yep. Happy New Year to everyone. Yep. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. But give me one second. I don't think that's worth mentioning exactly. But one thing I want to mention as well, because I think this is worth mentioning, right? With analyzing all these games, obviously it's going to be how do I want to put this, man? Yeah, I'll just move on. I want to know your guys's opinion on this topic. Through all the things that I've said so far, with acquiring skills, with playing the games within the game. What are the games right now that you want to go ahead and play? For next year, I'm gonna ask the chat that question. For next year, you want to play certain games, and maybe you want to play certain games that you didn't play this year, right? What are the games that you want to play next year? Answer that in the comments. Appreciate it. Been here the whole time, just lurking, man. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, man. So, like I said, what games do you want to play next year? What games have you been playing all along? Are the games that you've been playing all along this year that we just had, right? Were they aligned to the bigger games that you want to go ahead and play eventually? And if they weren't, then what are you doing, right? So that is something that I personally had to ask myself is the actions that I'm taking in the daily, are they exactly contributing to the bigger goals or the bigger games that I want to go ahead and play? And like I said, if they're not, if I observe them from afar and if they're not exactly aligned to the goals or the games that I'm trying to go ahead and play right now, then obviously you must remove them. Maybe it doesn't make any sense to do that right now. Maybe eventually it'll make a lot more sense to go ahead and do, but maybe right now in the moment it just doesn't make that much sense, right? And that is something that I feel like a lot of people really need to analyze for themselves as well is maybe you're doing something right now that just doesn't make any sense to do right now. Maybe it's something that you even like doing, but maybe it's not. It's just not the time for you to go ahead and do it. Maybe there's a better time in the future to go ahead and do that, right? Come on, man. Come on, man. She's talking that shit, man. Ain't no way, man. Ain't no way. But essentially what I want to go ahead and do with the rest of this podcast, along with asking questions and, responding to the comments and everything, I want to go ahead and give you a very, very vague a very, very vague thing so you can go ahead and analyze. So I'll go ahead and explain to you the games that I'm playing. And maybe by me explaining the games that I choose to go ahead and play, maybe you will figure out the games that you want to go ahead and play for yourself, right? So for example, right, one of the aspects of this would be, let's just say the game of health, right, or the game of longevity. Like I said, I kind of already broke that one down, but essentially, what it would look like in the present moment, in the daily, right? Yeah, in the daily, essentially. What would it look like in the daily, right? It would look like me maybe being very, very intentional with my sleep, right? Maybe getting in enough hours. That's the way you would first start your day is obviously by sleep, right? So making sure you have enough sleep. When it comes to longevity, when it comes to health, that would be one way when you go ahead and do it, right? Or let's just say it would be eating a certain meal or eating certain types of food that are going to be healthier than, let's just say, fast food, right? That would be a decision that I make or something that I eliminate that would be contributing to the bigger game. You see what I'm saying? And then maybe later on within that day, I would work out, right? Those are going to be all things that would still contribute to that same overall goal or that same overall bigger game of, let's just say, health and longevity, right? So you can kind of break that down for every single aspect of your life. And of course, there's going to be a few categories that I would recommend for you to go ahead and plan, right? And maybe they don't exactly align with what I'm doing, but nonetheless, maybe you can have equivalent to your life. So I'll give you some of mine, man. So the biggest game that I think, if I've analyzed it correctly, the biggest game I think you can play is to fulfill your life's purpose. I think that's the biggest game you can play. And every decision that you make outside of that should be contributing to that overall end goal, right? And maybe it's something bigger than that for you, right? But for me personally, as far as I could think, that is going to be that is going to be the biggest game that I possibly can play. And the biggest game that I think is worth playing, right? Which is why I take the actions that I take every single day, right? So like I said, the biggest game for me is to fulfill my purpose, right? And I said this time and time again on this podcast, but I'll go ahead and say it again. My purpose is to inspire, empower, and educate the ones around me and of my influence, right? And by doing that, I must figure out a vehicle that would allow me to go ahead and do that, right? So like I said, maybe the biggest game for you is your purpose, right? What is the vehicle that is going to help you fulfill, or what are the vehicles that are going to help you fulfill your purpose, your greater life's purpose? What are going to be the vehicles? So I'll give you an example. One of the vehicles for me is going to be doing this podcast. Creating a personal brand is part of my vehicle of fulfilling my purpose, right? Along with that would be maybe taking care of my girlfriend or taking care of my family or um, uh, yeah, I was essentially you kind of understand where I'm kind of going with that, but nonetheless, the biggest game is to fulfill your purpose, right? So every action that you take should be, I'm speaking for myself, should be aligned with that, of course, right? Um, Give me one second. Obviously, my purpose is going to extend a lot more. My life's purpose is going to extend a lot more than the purpose I tell you right now and then. But I just wanted to give you something to go ahead, for you to go ahead and take, right? But yeah. So like I said, maybe one of the games that you want to go ahead and play. This is a game that I would definitely recommend for you to go ahead and play. Maybe the type of game that you want to play is you being successful, right? But if you want to play that game, which I would recommend every single person watching this to go ahead and play because it's a game worth playing, right? You must break that down for yourself, right? What does that look like to you? What does that success look like to you? What are the smaller games that I can play that would contribute to that bigger game, right? That is going to be the main question for today's podcast. What are the smaller games that I can play in the present moment or in the daily that will eventually lead me to the goals that I go ahead and have for myself, the bigger games that I have for myself? And everything, and here's the thing, once you begin to conceptualize and break it down for yourself, you have a lot more structure than the average person. And I feel like if you are able to refer back to this and have it all in one spot, you're going to have a complete advantage over most people, because most people don't have it organized. They have it within their mind. They have it within their thoughts, and maybe their mind is not as cluttered as yours is. But I would say for the most part, I think it's a worthy decision for you to go ahead and write these things down for yourself, right? And you can kind of create like almost like a big tree map, essentially, if you know what I'm trying to say, right? Essentially, something at the top, obviously, almost like a value hierarchy, essentially, and then you're going to have these things that branch out of that, right? And then you're gonna have more branches and things like that, of course. But you must be able to ask yourself the question of what games do you want to go ahead and play, what are the bigger games you want to go ahead and play, and then fulfill in all those missing points, because I feel like a lot of people, they want certain they want to partake in certain games, but their daily actions aren't aligned with that. So like, you see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense for them to go ahead and to say that. So like I said, maybe you're one of those people right now. Maybe you say you want to partake in a certain game, but your actions are not aligning, right? And if they're not aligning, right? If the tree map doesn't make any sense for you, right? Then you actually have an opportunity to go ahead and take action on that, right? Instead of being the person who has no structure and no clarity within that, but yet wants this and is living in complete delusion. Does that make sense, right? You want to avoid yourself from being that person as much as you possibly can. So with that being said, write it out for yourself. What does it look like? What are the bigger games that you want to go ahead and play? What are the smaller games that you must play to that are going to contribute to the bigger game that you want to go ahead and play, right? I've said that a few times now, but I want to emphasize and kind of hopefully give you some imagery of what that looks like within my mind. So when I start speaking about these things, what pops into my mind is like I said, exactly that. Like I said, branching down and like I said, seeing if there's any missing spots that are not exactly aligned, right? That's what it comes down to, right? Um, so like I said, right, with me, the biggest game is to fulfill my purpose, right? Part of me fulfilling my purpose is to go ahead and build this podcast, of course, right? That's going to be part of my personal brand, which is going to be part of fulfilling my purpose, right? And like I mentioned, I'll give you another one. Let's see. Let me think of another one. Let's just say I want to be a person who has a lot of status, right? And one thing you'll see with this as well is if you're able to be very, very clear and make the correct decisions within your life, you'll begin to see that a lot of the bigger games can lead you back to a certain action. For example, right? If I want a status, I want to be successful, and I want to fulfill my purpose. Right? Those are going to be all three big things that I think a lot of people would say are part of some of their bigger games that they want to go ahead and play. The one thing that would be common within all those is pursuing this podcast and doing and filming it and editing as much as I possibly can and building it until I have a lot of traction, right? That would be the almost like a keystone habit within pursuing all those goals, if you know what I'm saying. But like I said, maybe hopefully you have those for yourself, right? Maybe you have three or four big dreams that you or big games that you want to go ahead and play, but yet there's one daily action that you can go ahead and do that's going to contribute to those eventually, right? Like I said, hopefully you have that for yourself, man. That's what I'll say. Let's see what I got. Yeah, so like this is what I have, right? So I'm gonna break it down. At least this is what happens within my head, right? Like I said, this should be if you do this, it'll be a lot of writing. It'll be a lot of writing for sure. So right, obviously I have a bigger game um of wanting to fulfill my purpose. With below that is um is that I want to be influential and fulfill my definition of success. In order to be that, I have to build the personal brand, of course, right? Obviously being authentic, of course, and obviously, learning about self mastery and more importantly about sacrifice and self discipline. But in order for me to do that, right, the smaller game of that would be essentially, right, is being the man who can curve temptation, who's ready to sacrifice and who will do it daily, right? That is the person that you should strive for to be every single day, right? That you are and strive to be every single day, right? And you can kind of see, at least this is the way that I see it. And one thing you'll analyze as well is some of the smaller games, some of the how do I want to describe this, man? Some of the smaller games are essentially some of the bigger games, if that makes any sense, right? It'll all lead you back. It should all lead you back, and it should all make sense if you do it correctly. If you get rid of the missing links, and if you're able to ask yourself and clarify the games that you want to go and play, you should be in a good position. You should be in a good position for sure. But yeah, like I said, I'm gonna ask you the same questions that I had. I'm gonna go ahead and refresh everything that I said. So if you're new watching this, I appreciate for stopping by. Like I said, if you have any comments or questions regarding anything that I mentioned on today's episode, let me know for sure. Right. So like I said, today's episode, right? You must understand the games within the game, right? First, you must figure out what games are actually worth playing, right? The way that I analyze this for myself is I did a lot of self reflection, that's for sure. I did a lot of analyzing and observing my environment. More importantly, people that I wanted to be like, right? People that I was inspired by. I analyzed those people very, very closely, right? And from there, I began to create a value hierarchy for myself, right? To say this is going to be above what most people would say, or this is going to essentially replace what most people would put at the top of their value hierarchy. If that makes any sense, right? So essentially, once you can learn the games that you want to go ahead and play, or the games that are worth playing, then you can get to the point where you can go ahead and choose the games that you want to go ahead and play, right? But I don't recommend you exactly choosing games. Yeah, I don't recommend you choosing games before you know what games are worth playing, because you might not be exactly aligning to what you want to go ahead and do. So like I said, you must take that step very, very carefully, very, very carefully. And like I said, that's what it comes down to with um, analyzing where you are within this here as well, right? But figure out what games are worth playing. Then from there you must figure out what games that you want to go ahead and play. And like I said, what smaller games are going to contribute to the bigger games that are going to be aligned with your goals in future, right? So, like I said, the example that I use time and time again, the example I will continue to use, right? A lot of people want money. A lot of people want success. A lot of people want fame. But yet, you don't see exactly them taking the actions or the steps necessary or playing the games, the smaller games, that will eventually lead them to the goals that they want to go ahead and pursue, right? Don't be one of these people, man. So, the next question that I have for you is, what games do you want to play next year, right? There should be hopefully certain games that you didn't play this year, maybe that you couldn't, or maybe that, yeah, let's just say whatever, right? You just didn't do it, right? Maybe you procrastinated, whatever, right? With that being said, what are the games that you want to go and play next year? Be very, very clear with this. With all the knowledge and wisdom that you've acquired up until this point of life, going into next year, what games are worth playing? What games do you want to partake in, right? What are the bigger games, more importantly, right? I do believe a lot of life is kind of zooming out, getting a broader perspective. I think that's a lot of life, and that is the way that I would recommend for you to go ahead and approach every single year of your life. Analyze that it's a lot of time. Analyze it's a new year, right? Analyze there's a lot of time left, right? So with that being said, with all this time that you will have within this upcoming year, hopefully, right? What are the games that you want to go ahead and play, right? And something you must analyze as well. What games have you been playing all along, right? Analyze what games you've been playing all along, because I just think it's very, very important to see where you are right now. Because then if you're able to analyze where you are right now, you're gonna be able to correct yourself in the areas that you need to go ahead and correct yourself. And maybe you're even going to be able to encourage yourself to keep doing the things that you've chosen to do, right? which are very, very good, of course. And more importantly, another question that I haven't asked this podcast, but I feel like it's necessary to ask: what are not only what are the games, what are the smaller games that you want to play in order to play the bigger games, but more importantly, what is the vehicle that you need to go ahead and acquire, or a vehicle or skill that you want to go ahead and acquire that will allow you to play that game daily? I feel like a lot of people that they're missing the smaller games. They're missing the vehicle. They're missing the skills that are going to put them in a position where they can play the games that they want to play daily, right? So analyze this all for yourself. Maybe you're missing a vehicle. Maybe you're missing a certain skill. Maybe you're missing a certain smaller game, right? If you watching this right now, if you're not exactly at the goals that you want to go ahead and pursue, but yet you're still trying your best to go ahead and pursue them, the reason why you're not there yet is because either you haven't picked the right vehicle, you haven't acquired enough skills, or you haven't played enough of the smaller games in order to play the bigger game. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day, right? You can't exactly keep blaming the world. You can't blame the world. You have to take accountability and responsibility for your life, especially your life as a man, for sure. That's something that I've done and something that I will continue to do for sure. But with that being said, like I said, what games do you want to play next year, man? What games are worth playing, right? What skills do you find interest in, right? What skills do you think that are worth acquiring? What are the vehicles what are the vehicles that are out there, and what are the vehicles that can get you to where you want to go, right? What are the smaller games that you can play that will allow you to play the bigger games, right? I keep saying all these things and they're very, very similar, but nonetheless, they need to be emphasized because the more clear you are with this, the easier that life gets, right? Because in my opinion, life gets easier when there's more clarity. Of course, there should be a lot more. There should be a lot more ease ease of work if there's more clarity, right? Most people lack clarity, so therefore they are walking results of lacking clarity. It's as simple as that, right? And like I said, not to be mean or anything, but you don't want to be one of these people, right? There's plenty of people that are like that. You don't got to be one of those people anymore. There's plenty of people like that. Try to be different. Try to be different for sure. So like I said, maybe the biggest game for you is fulfilling your purpose, right? Whatever that looks like. Maybe it's your life's purpose. Maybe it's just to protect and provide. Maybe it's to influence people. Maybe it's to inspire people. Maybe it's to um, maybe it's to show people a mistake that to not go ahead and make again, right? Maybe your purpose looks different, but nonetheless, you must zoom out, like I had mentioned earlier in this podcast, right? And zoom out and ask yourself, what are the bigger games that I can play? What are the bigger games that I can play? What are the bigger games that are worth playing? When I analyze people, when I analyze the people that I'm inspired by, when I analyze the people who who I admire, right? What games do they go ahead and play? Maybe, like I said, most of them probably are going to go to the gym. If they're truly an admirable person, they probably go to the gym, in my opinion, right? They probably take care of their health. They probably want to live as long as they possibly can to be able to fulfill their purpose as long as they possibly can for their family, right? With that being said, maybe that's going to be your biggest game, right? But what are the smaller games? What are the smaller games that are going to allow you to play the game longer? Because there are smaller games that you can go ahead and play that will allow you to play the longer game. And yeah, I would break it down. I would break it down in sections of your life, man. I would break it down in sections of your life. What are things that you want to go ahead and accomplish? What are yeah, what are things that you want to go ahead and accomplish? What are vacations that you want to go ahead and have? Those are going to all be within this game, right? The game of life, essentially. That is what we're discussing on today's episode. The game of life, right? But more importantly, the constructed and customized game of life for yourself, for what you have, for yourself, for what the ideas that you want to go ahead and pursue, for the actions that you want to go ahead and take, right? So yeah, maybe like I said, and maybe the biggest game for you is to be the best person that you possibly can be for everybody else. And I would say that's part of your purpose, but maybe that's your bigger game. But analyze the bigger game, man. That's all I have to say. Analyze the bigger games that are worth playing. Play those games, man. That's pretty much what I have to say for today's episode. I appreciate you for stopping by. Hopefully, you guys got something from this. I've definitely learned a lot from this topic. I thought it was worth mentioning, And I thought it was something that not only did you guys, and this is gonna be rare. This is gonna be rare. Not only did I think that this topic was something that I thought you guys would like, but more importantly, it's something that you guys need to hear. So that is what it is, man. But yeah, hopefully I've articulated good enough for you to go ahead and go ahead and apply for yourself. But like I said, I'll reiterate one more time, right? Figure out the games that are worth playing. There's going to be certain games that you're playing right now that are not worth playing. Stop playing those games, right? Stop contributing to that bigger game that you can't even see, that you don't even want to be like, right? Figure out the games that are worth playing. Start playing the games that are worth playing. That's what it's ultimately gonna come down to. If you want to live the best life you possibly can, partake in games that are actually worth partaking in. Don't be like everybody else. Do some self analysis. Do some observations of the world. Reflect back within yourself. Talk to yourself. Ask yourself questions. And the more you do that, like I said, essentially you're going to end in more clarity than the average person, right? Like I said, the average person lacks clarity. Therefore, they live the life of somebody who lacks clarity. That's what it's going to come down to, man. So I appreciate you for stopping by. This was the first episode of me being 22, and this will be the last episode of this year. Had a hell of a year, fellas. I think we got up to, I think it's 80 something podcasts this year, or something like that, 80 or 90 something like that. But I appreciate the I appreciate your support. Everybody's support. I appreciate your support. And if you're watching, like I said, I appreciate your time and attention for sure. But other than that, this was episode 173 of the Life of a Champ podcast, talking about the games within the game, right? The game being life. Anything else I want to say before I go end it off? Yeah, make sure to go and follow me on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok and Rumble at Life of a Champ or at Life of a Champ podcast on all those. Other than that, yeah, I said everything I needed to say, man. Like I said, hell of a year. I'm looking forward to this next year. This next year is Told You So 2024. Just know I'll be saying a lot of I told you so, because quite frankly, I told you so. I've said it. I said a lot. I've been talking my shit a lot on this podcast. And now it's time to go ahead and put my head down and go ahead and act as if I talk my shit. So that'll definitely be an interesting thing. But yeah. Just know that there's going to be a lot more improvements within this podcast coming very, very soon. And I'm always open to hear you guys' suggestions. Maybe there's a certain topic that you want me to go ahead and talk about. Maybe there's a certain guest that you want me to have on. I'd be more than appreciative to hear your guys' suggestions within the comments. Whether you're watching this or watching this live, all the comments are more than appreciated. Other than that, I'll leave you guys off with the podcast motto. Fellas out here, man, we don't just work around here, man. We outwork. So make sure you outwork at these motherfuckers, because you know that I am, because you know that we have to. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. You have no other choice. You have to, man. Put in the work, but not only put in the work, you must outwork, man. That's what it comes down to, man. But y'all have a good rest of your nights, or have a good rest of your year. There's a few days left in the year if you're watching this in 2023. But yes, 2024, Told You So 2024 coming up next year in a few days. I'll be looking forward to that, and I will be continuing the second season of the Life of a Champ podcast, and it will end somewhere around mid next year. Also, something I want to say as well. 2 years of the pod is going to be on January 7th, so tap in with that for sure. I'll be having a podcast on that day. I don't know what day that is yet. I think it's actually going to be on a Monday. I'm going to be having a podcast on that day to celebrate the 2 years of the podcast. But like I said, I appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the encouragement. I appreciate all the nice words. And like I said, told you so 2024. We getting it, man. But I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good rest of your nights. And like I said, I work these motherfuckers, man. Somebody's got to do it, and it's got to be us, man.